York, and we are united in our opposition to the free trade agreement. I'm wearing my t-shirt today, which is from Korea. These are activists that sent me this t-shirt during the candlelight vigil. For those of you that may or may not remember, hundreds of thousands of Koreans led candlelight vigils and protest against U.S.-Korea Free Trade Agreement in 2008 when then South Korean President lifted the restrictions on U.S. beef in South Korea because of the harm and because of the potential of mad cow disease.
My name is Tim Robertson with the California Fair Trade Coalition. We're here to show solidarity with the Korean workers, bring American workers, Korean Americans, Koreans from Korea, environmental activists, family farmers, and all sorts of other folks today to express our opposition to the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement. A bill that is being strongly pushed by our president, and despite the fact that he campaigned against this particular agreement and in favor of negotiating NAFTA and finding a new way on trade policy. Our workers in Korea stand with us today because this agreement is not about U.S. versus Korea, despite the fact that the end of the negotiation said that this is a good enough deal for the United States. This deal is bad for both countries. It's bad for workers. It's bad for the environment. It's bad for products. It's bad for everything except for corporate profit. And that's why we're all standing here today to put that message forward and hope that Minority Leader Pelosi and the rest of Congress get that message.
When President Obama was running his presidential campaign, he made a lot of promises. He made a lot of promises to the American working poor, to the unions, to the farmers, saying that things would be different, saying that he would not forget his promises, that there would be different kind of trade agreements, not the NAFTA deals. We are here today because we are here to tell Ms. Pelosi, our President Obama, that you might have forgotten your promises, but we have not forgotten September 2003. September 2003 at the WTO trade negotiations, when a Korean farmer, a colleague to many of us, Lee Kang-hae, stabbed himself in the chest saying trade agreements, WTO kills farmers. It's a shame that our Democratic Party that makes promises forgets its promises. And we are here together because the American citizens, American workers, American trade unions, American farmer organizations are saying we are with the people of Korea. We will march with you. We will demand that whether it's the Republicans or the Democrats, we want different kind of trade agreements. Trade agreements cannot kill our agriculture. They cannot kill the people who grow our food. It cannot kill the workers who are working for us. And we need different kind of trade agreements. So I would say, let's remember Lee Kang-hae today, which the media then said he was emotional. Yes, he was emotional because he had lost his fields. He was emotional because that week when he took his life, the next week his daughter was getting married. So in the memory of Lee Kang-hae, let's stand up and say, Nancy Pelosi, President Obama, we will not give up this fight for fairness, for justice and fair trade agreements.
I'm also proud to stand here today with the San Francisco Labor Council. For us in Mexico, we know clearly what these trade agreements are about. They demolish our communities in Mexico. They drive us off the land. They drive us into cities and across the borders. And when we come to these borders, the question that is asked is, or what we're told in effect, is if we can make money off you, then you can come in. And if we can't make money off you, stay out. And we say, and why do these policies not only hurt workers abroad, they hurt workers here. They are schemes to move manufacturing jobs abroad, to smash the labor move and weaken the labor movement here, right? To drive the wages down throughout the world and to maximize profits that aren't shared. I stand today proudly with Korean workers, and I ask our government to please hear our demands. These are the results of trade agreements: firings, jailings, kidnappings. Is this what we want? Because what do they want? What do other workers want? They want the same thing we want, right? A fair and decent wage. Be able to provide for our families. Be able to have health care. And the purpose of these free trade agreements is to decimate in each and every country those needs that we have. Now, what is the source of these problems? Increasingly, we should be very clear. These last elections have made very abundantly clear that our political leaders don't speak for us and they stand for nothing. They are pawns of the rich. They do what they're told. And then they tell us lie after lie. They put it in the press. They smother us with their lies. They keep us without knowledge. But guess what? They can't accomplish those goals because we can always just talk to each other. We can always just stand to each other. So when we cannot hear the truth from these pimps and whores that call themselves politicians, if we can hear the truth from fellow workers. For some who think my talk is too strong, I say it is too measured. It is time for us to see that these elections are nothing but shams. The people we elect are nothing more than puppets for global interests that want to keep us down. We should, in my view, we should not retreat from the electoral battlefield, but we must begin to discuss the obvious. If the politicians don't deliver what we need, our political expressions will occur through union actions in workplaces, cities, and nations. European workers got it right. When the oppressors step on us, they rise up and shut down nations. It is time for the labor movement in this country to take those powerful lessons. Shut them down. Shut these industries down. If they won't listen to us, if they won't give us the kind of agreements to protect our health, shut them down. And how do we do so? Peacefully, right? No, we occupy the plants. We occupy the workplaces. We occupy the communities. Because if they don't deliver, other leaders will.
I'm representing an organization called Eclipse Rising. We are Koreans from Japan, or Zainichi Koreans, based now in the U.S., and we organize around issues of solidarity and civil rights for minorities in Japan, peace and reunification in Korea, and community service for Zainichi Koreans residing in the U.S.
Hello, my name is Stephanie, and I'm representing the organization Hello Organized Bay Area Koreans, or HOBAK. We are an organization concerned about peace and justice issues pertaining to Koreans in the diaspora and the peninsula, and we represent the diversity of the diaspora, including LGBT queer Koreans, as well as adoptees and mixed race Koreans and disabled Koreans.
We're united here today to demand Representative Pelosi and other members of Congress to vote against the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement. This agreement is extremely detrimental to laborers, farmers, the environment, and the Korean healthcare system. We refuse to stand idly by as Congress passes yet another massive Bush-era free trade agreement that will devastate the working class people in Korea and the U.S.
So this last summer, I went on a program to Korea, and we met with several farmers who shared their struggles and difficulties with selling the rice that they grew. And they told me that this free trade agreement would make it next to impossible to make a living, and asked me in my capacity as a U.S. citizen and someone who has the advantage of having access to my government to do my best to fight against this agreement, which is tantamount to a death sentence to farmers in Korea.
Koreans in the diaspora, this issue is especially pertinent since we maintain our connection to our homeland and are strongly against the building of a U.S. corporate economy on the backs of our family and friends. As Koreans in the U.S., it is our responsibility to make these demands in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Korea.
We're often told that free trade is going to lift all boats, but looking at the details of this agreement, it looks like the boats that are going to be lifted the most are going to be people who are out there stranded in storms and floods and hurricanes and all the effects of climate change. It's those rescue rafts that are going to be lifted, because what we're seeing in this agreement is it's going to increase the emissions that are causing climate change. What the U.S. auto manufacturers got as one of the details of this dirty deal is dumbing down Korea's clean air laws and their emissions regulations for clean air vehicles in Korea. Now, we're making some of those in this country, but we need to make more. But we shouldn't be using these free trade deals to dumb down other countries' emission standards. Right.
That's right. You got it, brother.
Thank you. Viva LACLA. There are many bad problems with this deal. IFG is here because we wanted people to know that the work that we've done over the years has been to point out the details of these deals and how they promote the corporate interest. And what we see right here is very clearly how that interest is coming at the expense of people not only in Korea, not only in the U.S., but around the world. 500 people today discovered in Brazil dead from the latest landslides near Rio de Janeiro, the floods this past summer in Pakistan. These things are going to get worse until we put in those emissions laws and not be using the trade agreements to dumb them down. So let's stop this deal. We ask Speaker Pelosi, former Speaker Pelosi, to still use what we have in this Congress. We have more fair trade elected officials now than ever. The numbers are rising. It's not a left-right issue. It's an up-down issue. It's a clean air, it's a survival, and it's a green jobs issue. So let's stop this deal and let's make better trade policy in the U.S.
My name is Jared Brown. I'm with an organization called Power in San Francisco. We're a low-wage family worker. And we're also a part of Jobs with Justice locally, which is an alliance between community organizations and workers. And we're part of the Grassroots Global Justice Alliance as well. And in 2006, I actually had the privilege of going as part of a delegation to South Korea to be in solidarity with the workers' movement. And I was in the streets with hundreds of thousands of workers who have been leading one of the most militant and courageous worker struggles in the world. And I know the entire world saw Korean workers march through the streets of New York a few years ago opposing free trade agreements. We all watched in the WTO when Korean workers put on life vests to swim and catch the corporate giants that were trying to keep workers away. And that kind of militancy, that kind of creativity is the inspiring leading edge of the workers' movement right now in the world. It's an honor to be here today, and I think Pelosi has a responsibility to respect those workers. Clearly, the Korean people are saying no and rejecting the free trade agreement, and we need to have the courage. If she's with the Obama administration, if she's representing the Democratic Party, she needs to be responsive to the workers' movement in the United States and in Korea and reject these agreements that are a global race to the bottom.
The rally today is very important for working people, community people, and others to see that the American people are opposed to these NAFTA type agreements. One of the things that we learned from NAFTA was sold to the American people that it was going to make things better for people in Mexico and people in the United States. The reality is the opposite. NAFTA has hurt the people of Mexico. Millions are being thrown out of work. Farmers have been kicked off their lands. The industry has been privatized. Unions have been busted in Mexico. The government has called in the army to break unions in Mexico, and workers are in jail in Mexico. This is under the auspices of NAFTA. That's a free trade agreement which was supposed to help people. And in the United States, what has happened? They've said to the American workers, either you lower your wages or we're going to go to Mexico. They've tried to pit the American workers against the Mexican workers. What we believe is that this KORUS, this Korean-U.S. Free Trade Agreement, will do the same thing. The workers in Korea are under tremendous repression. The deregulation of the Korean economy has harmed workers and farmers. Farmers have committed suicide. Workers are in jail today in Korea. And people people should understand they don't have democratic rights in Korea. For example, government workers are not allowed to have a union. Why? Is that democracy? That government workers are not allowed to organize? Furthermore, the Korean trade unions' offices have been raided by the police, and you know what they raided them for? They said the Korean teachers were lobbying against legislation. In other words, it's illegal for the Korean teachers to lobby for legislation. Is this democracy? No! Is this the kind of country we want to have a free trade agreement with? No! We need the American working people and the Korean working people to unite together. Now, there's some differences. Some unions are supporting this agreement, unfortunately, because they think it'll bring short-term benefits to them. But the logic of these free trade agreements, it will benefit the multinationals. For example, the Pfizer Corporation. The workers at Pfizer and Seoul tried to organize a union. They were fired. Now this multinational Pfizer wants to have a union-free environment. In the United States, they fired workers who complained about health and safety. They want the same thing in Korea. They don't want Korean workers to have the right to have a union. I don't say we should have an agreement with that country. We should demand that country have freedom for the workers. Workers have a right to organize unions. Why should workers be fired for organizing unions? And that is not just the case in Korea, it's a case in the United States. 12 to 20,000 workers are fired every year in the United States simply for trying to have a union. Is that democracy? No! So we have to begin an education campaign because the media here, which is controlled by the corporations, want to say that this will benefit American workers. But we can say to Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi, Senator Boxer, Senator Feinstein, NAFTA-type agreements have not benefited the working people of this country. NAFTA-type agreements have hurt the workers of Mexico and the workers of the United States, and we do not want a similar type agreement that will hurt the people of this country and hurt the people in Korea. Now, lastly, President Obama said that he would not push an agreement until that there were labor conditions in that agreement that protected the workers. This was a promise that President Obama signed. What has happened with this agreement is that there are no legal protections that require Korea to abide by democratic labor rights. They were supposed to be in this agreement, but they've been left out. Why have they been left out? Because the multinationals who benefit from these agreements don't want the Korean workers to have strong unions. I say, as an American worker, we need strong unions in Korea! That's right! Yes. Strong unions in Korea benefit workers in this country. That's right. They benefit all of us because unions fight for health and safety rights. Unions fight against discrimination. Unions fight for decent wages and working conditions. That's why we want strong unions, and we want solidarity. Our enemies are not the Korean workers. Our enemies are not the Mexican workers. Our enemies are the multinationals who push these free trade agreements to destroy workers on all sides of the border. So thank you, solidarity, and let's campaign to stop these free trade agreements.
The model that we see in South Korea, the kind of repression and corruption that we see, is a model that's exported from the United States. One provision of the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement is one that's being pushed by pharmaceuticals, Pfizer, some of the largest multinational corporations coming from the United States. The South Koreans currently have a universal health care system, one that we so desperately want and need in this country. And one provision of the FTA will do away with the positive list, which is a list that people who have Kaiser, that have different health insurance, that they will get reimbursed for generic drugs. With this free trade agreement, that will be considered null. It will extend the life on patents on pharmaceuticals, and it'll make that universal healthcare system so expensive that it'll do away with South Korea's universal healthcare system. Now, we are fighting for healthcare in this country, and now we're letting these pharmaceutical multinational corporations kill South Korea's public healthcare system. We don't want to do that. We don't want to export this system. We want to stop that system right here and fight for a different country, for the working people of this country.
I am not surprised because the U.S. is one of the leading leaders of this capitalist system, which we view as immoral. It is an immoral system because it is based on greed. It is based on greed for more power, for more money, not for poor people, not for regular working families, but for those up 1% in our society that own our land, that own our politicians, that own this political system. And we gather here today in this fight against the Korea Free Trade Agreement that the U.S. has signed. Is only symbolic of our desire for genuine change in society. And unless this economic system falls down, there will be no justice in our land. Our enemy is this economic system that has victimized every working person.
That's right.
Our enemy is capital that seeks to flow into every country at the expense of the dignity of every working person. We are gathered here today on the eve of Martin Luther King weekend to remind our politicians who over this weekend will schmooze, will have breakfast, will have dinners, will have parties to celebrate Martin Luther King. But remember, he died in Memphis standing in solidarity with sanitation workers. It is when Martin Luther King started to connect the dots of racial justice and economic justice. It is when that happened that he became an enemy of this system.
한미 FTA 문제점을 여러분들에게 알리고 저지하기 위한 투쟁을 조직하기 위해서 미국에 왔습니다.
I came here all the way from South Korea in order to let you know our perspective on the Korea-US Free Trade Agreement and to come together in solidarity in opposition to this Korea-US FTA.
우리가 한미 FTA를 반대하는 이유는 무엇입니까?
What are the reasons that we oppose the US-Korea Free Trade Agreement?
그것은 명백합니다.
It's very clear.
한미 FTA는 노동자들에게 재앙입니다.
The Korea-US FTA is bad for workers.
이미 나프타 협정에서 충분히 증명됐습니다.
You've already seen the effects of NAFTA on our economy.
FTA는 한국, 미국, 양국 노동자들, 민중들을 불행하게 만들 수 있습니다.
The Korea-US FTA will have a deleterious and devastating effect on workers and people in Korea and the US.
금융 자유와 시장 개방과 민영화로 누가 이익을 얻습니까?
Who benefits from the privatization? Who benefits from the opening of markets? Who benefits from financial deregulation?
그것은 바로 소수의 자본과 기득권층입니다.
It is only a small minority of capitalists who benefit from these things.
동지 여러분, 지금은 세계적 경제 위기의 시기입니다.
Comrades, this is a time of grave financial crisis throughout the world.
한미 FTA가 도입되면 금융 서비스 상품에 대한 새로운 규제가 불가능합니다.
If the FTA should pass, the deregulation cannot be reined in.
아직 세계 경제 위기가 끝나지 않은 이 시기에 왜 이러한 협정을 맺어야 합니까?
At such a time as this, when we still have yet to overcome the financial crisis, do we want a trade agreement that will further deregulate financial markets?
한국은 신자유주의 세계화 정책으로 노동자들은 더 가난해지고 있습니다.
Because of the trade policies of neoliberal globalization, workers' rights are decreasing and decreasing.
비정규직 노동자들이 850만에 이르고 노동 기본권도 계속 악화되고 있습니다.
In my country, South Korea alone, there are 8.5 million irregular workers. That's workers without contracts, without jobs, without any security.
이러한 상황에서 FTA가 비준될 경우 노동자 민중의 삶은 더욱 악화될 것입니다.
In this situation, should the Korea-US FTA pass, the lives of workers and people will only get worse.
최근 한국은 FTA를 저지하기 위해서 강력한 대응을 준비하고 있습니다.
In Korea, we are mounting a mighty struggle to oppose the Korea-US FTA.
이 자리에 모이신 동지 여러분,
Comrades who have gathered here today,
한미 FTA는 애초부터 있어서는 안 될 협정입니다.
we need to come together to oppose this free trade agreement.
처음부터 다시 재검토되어야 하고 폐기되어야 합니다.
We need to take it back to the drawing table. It's not about changing or revising it. We need to completely renew this trade deal.
이제 이러한 한미 FTA 저지를 위해서 우리는 힘을 모아야 합니다.
In order to strike down this free trade agreement, we need to combine our strengths together.
한미 FTA 반대 투쟁은 한국 민중의 문제뿐만 아니라 미국의 민중이 함께 싸울 때 가능해집니다.
The Korea-US free trade agreement will not be brought down by the forces of the Korean people alone, nor by the forces of the American people alone, but by the unity and solidarity of our peoples working together to bring this trade deal down.
한국은 민주노총을 중심으로 농민들, 시민사회단체, 야당까지 힘을 모아 북해 비준을 막아낼 것입니다.
The Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, along with the civilian organizations and even the opposition parties of the government and farmers together, we will bring down the free trade agreement.
FTA는 우리의 미래가 아닙니다.
The FTA is not our future.
우리 모두 한미 FTA를 막아내는데 힘을 모읍시다.
Let's join together to fight the US-Korea FTA.
Our weapons, solidarity, Jim Phil and Kieran Silkwood, the list goes on and on. With every year that passes, 60,000 more are gone, cause it's a war on the workers. Yeah, it's a war on the workers. Yeah, it's a war on the workers, and it's time we started calling the shots. Copay. It's a war on the workers and take your benefits away. It's a war on the workers. They talk privatization. It's a war on the workers and cooperation. It's a war on the workers. They call it flexibility. It's a war on the workers, but every working stiff can see. It's a war on the workers, and it's a war on the workers. It's a war on public education. It's a war on pensions. It's a war on your benefits. It's a war on your wages. And thanks to NAFTA and the WTO and the Korean Free Trade Agreement, it's a worldwide war. Come fight the war on the workers.